Hello, Beyond All Reason aficionados. In this game today, we're going to discover possibly one of the best time attacks I've ever seen in a bar game. Now, Atheos has refined this even further somehow, and so we're going to dig into what Atheos does. The second part of this video, which is super important, and if you're looking to maximize your eco game, you're going to have to watch what I do and how well I scale. I get like over 100 Titans out within an hour. We have 3 timing attacks like Atheos. It's a nightmare to deal with, right? And you can scale all through it from this position here and be the best eco front game changer that you could ever imagine if you follow what I do later in the video. But for now, we're just going to watch a really cool game. So I sell this sort of concept to you. It's a little bit left field from how the metas go. People tend to go all units or they go all scale. They don't tend to do timing pushes, which now I've observed better players play, right? Despite the never-ending aggression or back and forth, we do see actually critical timings being hit, and we sort of see these really high-tier players maybe adapt if something goes wrong. So we're going to see a pretty much perfect build from Atheos, close to it. Has actually changed up the earlier build that he was going with, and just going with the 1 energy storage this time. I agree with that. I think 2 energy storage is ridiculous. I've played with it a bit myself, but the fact is, if you get bad wind, you're going to run out of that energy anyway. Whether you have 2 or 3 or 4 energy storage, it just gets drained that quickly. But, you know, having 7,000 energy storage compared to 1,000, that's really useful. Over my side, I've done a similar sort of thing. I build this energy storage really early now, because it takes the place of having to build too many wind turbines at the start. Our actual red player here is a 2 Chevron player, so we definitely don't have the advantage in players, although they've got a 2 Chevron and 1 Chevron. So yeah, we've got 2 Chevrons. I'm really proud of Isotope on our team though, because come up to the front line as a contestant, that better than what I do half the time, right, is effectively contest this so far in and allows me to snoop through and come through a little bit late. But that's why I've got these grunts back here. If they need me, I'm here. If not, at least I'm not getting my grunts picked off. Pawn, sorry. I really like this defense. It looks to be ridiculously effective. Let's see if it actually stands up to any sort of decent offense from the enemy. Although on the other side, I just don't think Normie knows how to handle this. We're here to really concentrate on Atheos though, so let's not get sidetracked. Atheos elected to build wind turbines primarily. It's now building energy converters. We see at this critical stage now from a previous playthrough, blew up the commander a little bit before 5 minutes and recovered that. Build this around the 6-minute mark, the advanced bot lab. These 3 constructors are pretty much all in range of 4 mexes, so can really facilitate that early T2 mex build. The only thing that stopped Atheos a little bit, because it was a little bit after 6 minutes, I think the wind dipped a little bit. So yeah, that's why this hasn't been as quick as other builds we've seen from Atheos. Personally, I thought it was better when Atheos kept the main constructor around just a touch longer and blew it up at around the 5-minute 30 stage. Maybe that's too late, but maybe 5-minute 15, something like that would be a better timing. You can see just how quickly these get built, these 2. Despite that, Atheos has sent this T2 constructor to us super early on in the game, because I paid super early on, I believe. Around this time, we're doing our typical mace thing now. Because I'm facing these difficult twin guards, although they're not the best lasers in the game, a couple of them are pretty nasty combined with rocket bots. So this is turning a little bit too hard for me, so I'm having to go over here and attack from this angle. We're able to just sort of prod around with these maces and attack from different angles, keep the pressure up, that's most important. So I think Atheos got to around 50 wind turbines, now starting to build a few more, and got 10 energy converters up. I'm really grateful for this early T2 off Atheos. Took a little while to get over here, but I'm definitely trying to pick up pace with building the T2 mexes now. Up until this point, I've just been producing maces. This is my big game plan, and building basically enough wind turbines that we don't hopefully run out of energy too often. As I'll be discovering in the later eco part of this build, I'm starting to lean now on advanced soul collectors and incorporating them in, just for these sort of maps where you've got 0 wind speed potential. I'm repairing and reclaiming the best I'm able to on the front line. I couldn't even tell you how many maces were built actually. It's been between 20 and 25, I believe. So like Darkbot said, this wind, it is problematic, and it has actually set back Atheos back a little bit. But in saying that, this reactor's going down nice and early. This will be polished off around the 12-minute mark, despite Atheos really providing constructors to a few different people. They were paid for, though, I believe. Personally, I believe in perhaps giving T2 constructors to people for free early on and telling them to pay later. But it's really hard because most of the time they don't pay you, so it does set you back. Otherwise, it just does hold back your teammates so much if it's like 25 minutes of the game and they still got T1 maxes. It's hopeless, really. As we can see, we're contributing as much as anyone else on the team, not more. But apart from Red, Super Smurf and 2 Chef, it's just... Look, D-gunning the enemy commander. What a hero. Blows himself up, though. One of the best noobs I've ever seen play, let's put it that way. Over here, we're keeping the pressure on. Despite us having a limited amount of maces, we're just doing this to keep the enemy on the back foot, but that's why I'm starting to put down some static defences to make a stopgap for the units we basically don't have. I'm going to try and keep these last guys alive now and rely on the Dragon's Claws that were built. Unfortunately, my little constructor bot dies. Damaski, the noob, says this. Why don't D-guns kill comms? Who knows? So this is a critical time in here from Atheos, and it's going to make us understand the point of the build and where this is going, right? So we've seen these now 8 construction turrets. These have been built maybe around the 10-minute mark, the 5 extra construction turrets. We also see they've got a total of 10 T1 energy converters. This reactor was around the 12-minute mark that it was up. Almost 60 wind turbines. And we've also got 1 T2 energy converter. All 6 mexes are up. And pretty much at the 13-minute 50 stage, they've built the 12th Hound and a Compass and Smuggler. That is Atheos's build right there. And that is very good timing. I'm not even sure I can do that. After this, I'm pretty sure Atheos is going to pull down this Advanced Bot Lab. Why? Because over here, right at the back line, so it's super duper safe, we see Atheos start to build the Aphis. Now, personally, I think this is way too premature. Looking at the maths when it comes to building a scalable economy, but, you know, it works for Atheos, so we're going to see how this goes. We've seen about 5 minutes prediction for the build of this. We now see the ETO come down because of the reclaim of that T2 bot lab. Damaski's really just like lost. Learning about setbacks. Yeah, and here comes Atheos. A very nice timing on these hounds. I think some extra construction turrets were built, so about 13. We're seeing about a minute and a bit, so it's going to be a little bit over 2 minutes. That's not a drastically inefficient build at all, actually. I'd consider maybe 1 reactor and reclaim the T2 lab. Ooh, maybe that can actually work and just be as efficient as reactors. Maybe slightly inefficient, because we're going to go straight into basically energy excess. What's great about it, though, is in the meantime, Atheos can sit back and make sure these hounds stay alive. We see already 10k of contribution with 0 damage received. Well, we've got a 1-to-1 damage received to damage dealt ratio, okay? 50k or thereabouts. So we're just starting to join the fray as well with our hounds. These poor rocket bots, just totally outclassed. Very expensive too. That's 1,000 metal that's just disappeared there. Yeah, so these 13 construction turrets now have gone straight into advanced energy converters. That must have been around a 16-minute APHIS, which is not bad actually. Maybe that does work from an efficiency standpoint to go straight into an APHIS if you claim the T2 lab. I got pretty beat up here, so I'm going back to shelter up while Atheos is not even getting hit at all. I find it got 2k damage against him. That's 1.6k efficiency. 1600% efficiency, damage efficiency. Damn Atheos. Really refining this build. We see this anti-nuke come up as well at this time. Very good little grouping in the back line here, and that means it's hard to, I guess, EMP by being stuck in the middle of a heap of buildings. One thing I am noticing about this build, with about 13 turrets, now 16, maybe a few more turrets need to go down a little bit earlier, because we're always accessing metal. And we move forward at this time, just because we've, it's particularly Atheos, but us as well, we've smashed down this front line. So we've got 13 hounds in total. Now we see this from Mr. Domino. Wow. What a play. N gets away again. Then I get taken down by Normie. Oh no, Atheos gets taken out. Just unlucky. I wonder what happened to those forces. Very good commander play from the enemy. That was so cool. And this final fat boy, just to seal our doom. So there you go, but we've managed to at least be able to capture a lot of these resources. One thing I must say is Atheos is not reclaiming any resources in this build. So once you've got the first Aphis up, the second Aphis comes online more quickly. In fact, it's the most efficient play at this point by far. And Atheos just getting by having energy excess and immediately putting down the converters afterwards. I guess it's good because you only need to spend on one advanced construction bot. A little bit inefficient, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, so we see Atheos using the N command to dish all this out pretty quickly. Yeah, our commander gets sniped here just from these Sheldons, so good work from the enemy, applying pressure. Yeah, I'm surprised to see we're pretty much leading the team here in damage given and damage received. Also at this 21-minute mark, if we actually look at metal produced, apart from Atheos and Nub 1, Nub 1's the other sort of eco, so they're ecoing up pretty hard. We're not ecoing that hard, but we're producing a really good amount of metal from this T1 economy. Energy converters, plenty of wind turbines, getting early-ish reactors up. But actually, we got given this lane here. Our front gave us these 3 mexes. That's the difference, is why our economy is just so rocking. Despite really being stuck in T1, we're going to put down some reactors soon. I'm a little bit slow with it because I've been pretty busy on the front line. When I feel there's sort of a chance we can finish the game early, I'll tend to maybe divert a bit more attention here than otherwise. Not that it mattered anyway, because we're up against a stealth commander. I'm still not sure how to really combat that. I think they are a raider blip or something like that, but who can tell with chaos all around it? It can be a bit hard sometimes. So we're just going to pause it here because this is the next critical timing from Atheos, right? So these 3 Aphises done. Everything's all about the scaling up until the point that it isn't. We see here 26 construction turrets have been built in the end, going to an experimental gantry. That's finished off at 22 minutes, guys. And also we see these construction turrets come up here, about 3 bot labs, so nothing crazy. It's not 4, it's 3. Somehow they're splitting over 8, so that's an odd number, but there you go. So we've got 8 construction turrets over 3 labs, a bit of an uneven number, but it doesn't matter too much because we're just going ticks by the looks of it to create some spam. The first unit produced by Atheos is the Razorback. I'm going to get it out in about 30 seconds or so. The great thing about these ticks coming in now is we can just see it enables our front line to have a little bit of confidence on the attack. About this time, I actually started putting down this pulsar a little bit back from the front line just to sort of protect against the push, because I didn't have enough units. We've moved on to snipers now, but there is always a gap between the sort of hounds, particularly once they've taken a bit of a beating, and the snipers coming out in force. So that's why I've relied on this pulsar, just to sort of make sure these Sheldons don't push too far up, and we've got a decent response to them. Now, definitely without this spam from Atheos, these fat boys would have been a problem. Like, look at this, all this friendly fire damage. Okay, so I actually do have like about 8 snipers, so it's not too bad. 8 snipers and 9 hounds. So I've got 3 Razorbacks. I guess that's slower units. Atheos then switches over to Marauders, and it's going to build like 25 of them or so. Maybe even 30. And immediately we see this attack happen just a little bit after 24 minutes. The Marauders are reaching the Razorbacks this exact time. And this is just early enough to be devastating, particularly on the back of that other damage and push done before. It's nice actually, these units haven't had to group up and basically waste their production for 1 second. They've been able to come in and effectively charge through the enemy. In a high OS lobby, it wouldn't necessarily happen like this, but you never know, particularly if the front has been beaten down. This stream is just never ending. We're seeing these 20 or so Marauders. So I believe about 30 would have been built. 25 to 30 would have been built by the 26-minute mark. On top of 3 Razorbacks. What a series of timing pushes. And the game's over. So pretty much we've shown what Atheos can do in Atheos' way, and 3 Aphis seems to be a really solid timing. If you left the video now, this really is the gold standard of something to try. It's horrible to try and combat against, and you're going to win a lot of games with it. What I want to show you guys here is how Eco Front can take this lessons from Eco, because as any sort of Eco Front or front line on a wide map or front yourself, right, you have to actually man the front during T1. You have to build laser towers, you have to build radar, you have to build thugs or maces, and you have to look at reclaiming some metal from all that expenditure, okay? And hopefully you can sort of scale at the same time. Now, you're not going to be able to do the timings that Atheos done, but you can do goddamn close. We're going to actually show a equivalent timing. I'm sure if you went 3 Aphis, you wouldn't be too far behind. We're going to go a little bit greedy with 4 Aphis before we go our basically Marauder and Razorback push, just to be that tiny bit more impactful. Basically, the difference is if you're looking at the defenses of your front line at the 3 Aphis stage and you're looking super duper strong, then maybe go for the 4th Aphis because it just gets up so fast, and then go into the T3 push. The difference of this build is we're pretty much going to build enough T1 to be threatening, not overbuild, only about 20 units or so. We're going to build enough T2 to be threatening, just like Atheos, but we're going to be a little bit further behind because of the T1 situation, having our commander not sacrificed, right, but reclaiming metal. We're going to actually come out ahead because of that in the end, but in practice it's very hard for you to reclaim enough to basically make up for all your T1 losses, right? So we're going to be a little bit further behind. But then we're going to come through with a really powerful Marauder attack, followed up by a really powerful 10 Razorback attack, followed up by basically Titan production at about the 28-minute mark while scaling ridiculously. So if that sounds pretty good to you, then yeah, let's go ahead and discover how this is done. I'm going to start off here on Glitters, right, where we've got this wild wind at the moment, and see we've built 5 wind turbines, or windmills as I call them, and then I've put down an energy storage right away. We've been able to get that off the bat off 5. Now usually if the wind's not pumping, we can't do that. But in the early game, wind turbines, of course, they're the most efficient thing, and the energy storage helps us get every little bit of excess air and keep us away from energy deficit, which is absolute death to scaling, because even our mexes break down, right? So this has got a minimum of 0, which is absolutely terrible. So what I do here is I start off, I build a bot lab, which is very efficient, and then I build 5 ticks. Now you can build a little bit less than me. So this is emulating a pretty solid T1 army that we're going to run with. We get some really good scouting in the early game. Now while I'm doing that, I'm putting down some extra windmills. I'm going to put down around 10 in total, just to make sure we get plenty of surplus energy into our energy storage. This energy storage is really super efficient and good value for at least 1, because you go from 1,000 max energy to over 7,000 max energy, right? So we've produced this and we've scouted very early in the game at 2 minutes. In this position here, in the corner, we're a little bit safer, so I do elect 3 constructor bots to go out and build the mexes. I also start off with building this advanced solar collector within range of my commander. Now I try not to move my commander as early as possible to maximize that 300 build power. I then send out these T1 constructors just to build the mexes straight up, because we've got 3 within our range. Next I build a Lazarus. I wouldn't usually recommend this in a lot of positions, but this one can be one that works because we look at the amount of excess metal around. It actually pays for the Lazarus straight up. We can always come back and reclaim it. And it can be useful for repairing a variety of things, right? So that's why we build it here. In this game against the computer, of course, we're going to be able to claim much more than that. which is going to sort of emulate some real-time reclaim we would have got in an actual 8v8 game. So I've come back, we've built this advanced solar collector. Now I want to talk about this because people might be going, whoa, advanced solar collectors, they're inefficient, they're terrible. I thought so too. And that's what was told to me. It was told to me that they're even worse than basic solar collectors. You know, I guess they are in a way because they take 5,000 energy, right? So the only sort of negative of advanced solar collectors is that a little bit less efficient overall on glitters than the wind turbines are, right? And they cost 10 times as much and they only produce 75 energy, which works out to be 7.5 energy for the same cost as a windmill. So that's not a lot less. If we presume the average wind speed to be 8.5, which I'd consider it to be, right? Because it never is like at 0 forever, but it can be at 16 for quite a long time, right? So if it might be 8.5 or 9, well, this is 7.5 energy, basically, for the same metal cost. The only negative we have is this costs 5,000 energy, right? Whereas a wind turbine or windmill will cost 1/3 of that. In saying that, this is very competitive with build power and with spacing, right? You can fit more of these in and be closer to construction turrets. Also, they're much more resilient. I think they might combine blow up, I don't know, but you'd be able to easier put a little bit of distance between each one than a wind turbine, which are just, when you start putting distance between them, you have a real trouble fitting them all in the base or not having to build the majors away. So there are problems like that. And to be honest, they're so often targeted, you end up with nothing from wind turbines and they get in the way. And the low energy, where you don't even get metal out of mexes, it's really turning me off them. Then last point why advanced solar collectors are sort of cool. Look at this energy storage in wind turbine, 0.5. These have got 100, right? So every little bit of energy storage matters, but mostly like it's got the 5,000 energy that it takes to build these. Well, that's fine. As long as we get about 10 of these up and some good wind, it might have to be slightly more energy storage. That can easily accommodate for that 5,000 energy, right? And once we've got that first one up, suddenly we're on a really good baseline energy. So even if the wind does die off, it's going to take a few more than one. We're not in any sort of problem at all. So this is what I've got now. An early advanced solar collector into a construction turret, and then let's see where we go from here. So before the 4-minute mark, I'm sending off my commander to participate on the front line, as it were, just like a real game, right? But what I'm doing here is I'm acknowledging maybe this player hasn't taken these mexes and they're expecting me to come up the lane. I don't know what the meta is with who takes these mexes, but I've noticed a few players lately have left these for me. I don't know why that is. So I thought the front here took all the mexes, but yeah, maybe the meta's changing. So in the case that they've left it for me, I'm going to pretend and go up and take them. See, we're finally running out of energy as we get that second advanced solar collector up, because it is a little bit expensive, right? But now we're starting to get this third one up and we're not bottoming out of energy. That's really crucial. As we get the fourth one up, we see we're starting to finally get up to an excess of energy, even if the wind speed's not all that great. I put down the second construction turret and I send that construction bot to build plenty of energy converters. Although we have gone over the energy excess with this with over 2,000, I mean, we've been really lucky with the wind. So I think the 4 energy advanced solar collectors before we go the energy converters and second construction turret is the way to go if we have the 3 construction bots within the base. Up the front, my commander is now putting down some defenses like they normally would be doing. And we've pretty much worked through the T1 build order, which was fairly hefty, before the 7-minute stage. That's okay. Now I've built about 9 of these energy converters before I've switched over to building another construction. So it's the 3rd construction turret now, as we start to get a little excess of metal. Also, at this point, I reclaimed the T1 lab. And we put down a T2 lab. Now this might be a little bit early for the game you're in, but we don't have a T2 constructor to get off eco during this game, so I'm pretending we're doing an early T2 push. Like, that can be legitimately done, right? Let's say the enemy along here has just porked up heaps along this whole area and it's really stagnating, right? And you've got rocketeers picking off your maces, okay? They can't push into here, but likewise you can't push into them. So we're pretending this is happening and we're just forgetting about the T2s from eco for whatever reason. A slightly inefficient play here is I'm not putting everything into the advanced bot lab. I am continuing to scale with advanced solar collectors. But we're not going to lose any of this scaling because they're going to go into our energy converters, right? So we're doing this sort of 50-50, 50% into our tech and production ability and 50% into our scaling, even at this early stage. So finally we're starting to get a surplus of energy, and that was the whole idea, is I did want that surplus of energy to be occurring, and so we don't run dry. Actually, we put the vast majority of the metal into this, so that's okay. This scaling hasn't become onerous. Despite me building more energy converters, we're still not utilising them, even with all these advanced solar collectors. So I think I made the right call here. We're building up to 10. From previous experience, you want to get about 1,000 energy surplus, and that's what kills us when this dips down to sort of 200 and 300, and that from bad wind. As we'd be getting, look at this wind, 2.3, 2.2, right? Everything would be choking, our mexes would be dying. We're at a stage where we might have that T2 builder from Eco not building the T2 mexes, or worse yet, the T2 mexes not producing any metal for us. So what I've done here is I've produced a couple of butlers just to help out, particularly as my T2 constructor comes around these mexes to help out with the construction speed of them. And so we've contributed T1 units to the game. Now we're doing our T2 unit build at around the 11 minute 30 stage. It's going to be a bunch of hounds, a smuggler and a compass. Now I'm noticing the energy start to dip a little bit more, so I've elected to put down 6 more advanced solar collectors. Look at how much more space efficient this is over the wind turbines, which, by the way, are hardly producing any energy. Our T1 economy is going to end up looking like this. It's going to be about 16 advanced solar collectors. It's going to be 14 T1 energy converters, and it's going to be about 10 wind turbines and an energy storage. About this time, we'll be finishing off our 6th T2 mechs. We'll possibly have them well finished off earlier than this if we got an early T2 off Eco. About this time as well, around the 14-minute stage, we're finishing production of the little army of about 12 hounds. This is following Atheos's build of having something on the field, and this way we can build ourselves another advanced constructor bot, maybe even 2, and then we can actually reclaim this T2 lab, which is super expensive. Once we get that second constructor out, we should have 6 of these constructor turrets on the base. I like to roll with 3 T2s. I find that a pretty good number to build everything that needs to be built. So I start reclaiming around the 15-minute mark. At the time we're reclaiming this, we can also start to go a little bit crazy with construction turrets. Here I probably haven't gone crazy enough, but we can start looking at a turret forest of, let's say 16. But we've got enough turrets of 7 just to make sure that we don't bleed out any metal, basically, right? But if you're fighting on the front and something distracts you, you mightn't be able to watch your base close enough and you might bleed the metal. So it's always better to have 14, 16 construction turrets, something like that, within the central location of your base. Here we've put down that first reactor at about 16 minutes 30. We just so happen to have built 16 construction turrets, so yeah. We are running with a tiny bit of efficiency, but you're going to find in your actual build, while you're fighting on the front line, you're going to have this sort of inefficiency anyway. And pretty much that's the way I work Eco. If energy is dipping, we build more energy, right? If energy is getting too high, we make sure we overbuild these advanced construction turrets. Make sure plenty of build powers go into that. If we're getting too much metal, we're putting more construction turrets down, particularly onto our energy production, right? So it's always a balance of trying to make sure we don't have any excess metal, we don't have any surplus energy, and keep things scaling as fast as possible, which is what this build's about. Because the next stage we're going for is weapons overmatch with T3, but we need to be able to afford it, right? So hopefully we have no disasters on the front line, we're using the hounds correctly and our T1 units, and we're basically able to scale up freely. We're at the 18-minute mark, and we're looking now at finding a tiny surplus of energy while we're on about 111 metal. Now I'm going to put down 4 reactors here. I possibly could have gone with 3. Overall, I consider 4 a pretty good number before we go into APHIS if we want to be 100% scaling up and efficient. So far, we've only managed to have 6k energy excess with a more stable power supply. And look at our metal produced compared to the computer. Almost 50k compared to 8k. For this first APHIS, we're looking at 25 construction turrets. Also, I've got some construction turrets over here to mainly work on these energy converters. Now, you're going to have to do this at times, otherwise the energy converters are going to fall way behind. And in actual fact, see, we've come up here and we've built these T2 mexes now. We've pretended our front player has left us. We're also coming back and trying to build this before in a convenient spot, the anti-nuke, before the 20-minute stage, in a good central location. This one's pretty good around here, because they're not going to be able to go anywhere on the base, and we're going to protect a fair bit of the front. One thing we're not simulating here is we're actually having some success on the front, and we managed to reclaim like a few thousand metal as a little bonus to us. So consider us maybe a little bit behind of where we would be otherwise, but of course we could also be way in front of where we would be otherwise if we're under heaps of pressure. So this is just a rough guideline on timings. With that, our APHIS is up before the 20-minute 30 stage, our first APHIS. While we just have enough T2 energy converters and T1 as well, alright, taking on the excess. So we're glad we built those 12. Even though they're less economical, they're still better than us bleeding extra energy, and we're just barely hanging on. And for that, we've got about 13 construction turrets over here in the energy converter area, although sometimes they will come over and help build an APHIS. So I'd consider at least half your construction turrets, perhaps even slightly more. Perhaps 2/3 of your construction turrets should be at all times on your energy converters, and compared to what's on your APHISes. Something like that in this early stage of the game. You might have to use a couple of those butlers to help out with the energy converter production. Now look how quick this second APHIS is going up. We're going to be able to build it in slightly over a minute. So that's pretty efficient right there. We're going to get all that extra metal that it makes from that extra energy back right away, and we're going to have a few minutes to 5 minutes. It's all going to be paid back, even this giant APHIS, right? That only happens if we build the energy converters, which we have. We've got about 14 up at the moment. That's the 22-minute mark. We can just see the scaling start to take off now. In fact, we're starting to actually have an excess of metal. Overall, running at 43 construction turrets at this time. And I can just about say I'm overbuilding the construction turrets at times to zero out this metal excess. And of course, prioritize the middle area, which is going to include both the APHISes and energy converters. Ideally, we want no construction turret being idle, because they are pretty expensive at 200 metal. So this third one's gone down even quicker, I believe. So we're at the 23.5 minute, and look at this one. It's going up 2% a second. It's crazy. We're going to have this all capped off around the 24-minute mark, and we've even started production on the experimental gantry, as well as some extra construction turrets. Just because we're starting to get a little bit of excess of metal again, so why not use it immediately? This was built under a minute, so that's fantastic. We're now up to an economy of almost 300 metal per second at the 24-minute stage, and we've built this experimental lab, right? Look at this. We've got 6k energy excess still. So I haven't bled any. So having these, sort of 20 construction turrets solely in the energy converter area, I think has been critical. We've had about, 40, 45 in the APHIS area in the end, about 20 over here. And of course, those APHIS construction turrets, what can we do? We can use them for the experimental gantry now. And even that, we have to build extra to not have an excess of metal. We need to build an extra 20 or so. Back here, some of these have fallen out of range, so we're going to reclaim them because they're 200 metal each. Okay, so I'm just going to pause the game here so we can get an exact look at the time. So we've got 20 Marauders made before the 26-minute mark. Now, I would have thought this had been possible if I hadn't seen replays of Atheos doing this. But essentially, we've been able to get this out super duper quickly, as well as just this gigantic economy. And the reason we've been able to produce so quickly is we stopped making APHIS for a little while, okay? These things are metal hogs like crazy. You shouldn't be producing them all the time until you've got your sort of timing attacks done. And this is now going to be a very potent force or help combat the enemy Marauder push. Now, if they've got super early Marauder push, we might be stuffed. But this is taken to the account that they're not going to come through to the sort of 24-minute mark where you guys are able to hold it off at that point. Over here, we're building energy converters all the time though. Even though the efficiency isn't necessarily that great, it's just getting ahead of this inevitable energy glut when we start doing APHIS production again. And because they're only 380 metal each, it's not taking up all your energy budget even. So they're just super duper build power heavy and of course energy heavy, but we're going to be glad that we've pre-built them. So I switch for this build order into 10 razors right away. Let's see how long this takes. So to me, in any noob lobby, this is a game-winning force as it is, if you use them correctly. We've supported during T1, we've supported during T2, and now we're coming through with this quite good timing with T3 with a massive overwhelming force. Till most of the Razorbacks are done, pretty much I'm not going to build another APHIS. These Razorbacks are a handy follow-up force because they allow us to essentially spread out and put out any fires, as well as to support the initial attack. And how long does it take to produce these? Yeah, about 20 seconds. So against this AI computer, they obviously just absolutely die to this force. They're just a beginner computer. Now, I've turned off the commander death ends the game off, so I can just get rid of these guys now to stop being a nuisance, basically. Let's see how the commander goes. What a hero. Catches that marauder. There we go. I was impressed with that commander. So I've got 10 Razorbacks out before 28 minutes, right? Yeah, see the last one's finishing up now. So I'm going to start building this APHIS just as it finishes. 20 Marauders and 10 Razorbacks out well before the 30-minute mark is brutal. Absolutely brutal. Now, I don't just build APHIS production, which might actually be a little bit more efficient because we haven't really got this gigantic economy yet. But still, I'm thinking, no, let's slowly scale while we produce Titans. This way we can keep the pressure on rather than giving away our advantage by switching to eco too fast. We can see once that Titan's done, all the construction turrets will flick over to this APHIS now and build it much quicker. So we'll get it done in a reasonable time still. But we've still got some working on the next Titan. So let's now 20 times this and see what happens to the base as we continue to scale. Just putting down this huge excess of construction turrets to make sure we don't glut metal as our economy starts to just blow up. Look at this, 465 with 35-minute mark, we're producing Titans. So we have 2 different T2 constructors now, or very soon, on these energy converters to make sure we don't excess too much energy. We've still only excess 6k. Now we're at almost 1,000 metal per second, 200 construction turrets. And producing these, let's slow this down. Look at this. The screen shakes. We're at the 45-minute mark now, and we've got 25 Titans. Got 1100 metal per second. Don't feel bad, guys, if you cannot replicate this in-game, because there's a lot more pressures in-game. We don't have that on us at the moment. But I do recommend you guys actually do this to see how easy it is to scale once you pay proper attention to it. Now, a trick I'm doing here is I'm actually building multiple APHISes at once by using the N command to get the T2 constructor to basically go to the next construction project before this one's done. So the construction turrets can keep busy most of the time, because we're not going to be able to build all of these in the same area when we're scaling to this degree. With the T2 energy converters, we're building like groups of 8 or so construction turrets in and around these T2 converter fields. Now we're starting to excess metal at the 47-minute stage, so I have to build an extra ton of construction turrets, and we're actually going to see us maxing out of the amount of construction turrets we can get on this experimental gantry. So we're going to actually have to build another one at some stage. So we're finally getting a metal glut, and we're starting to donate metal to the team. Now it's always better to transfer metal to your most effective player rather than just a little bit of metal to everyone. Let's fast forward again and see where this ridiculous scaling gets us. It's got 42 Titans now, 50 minutes, 45, got 1700 metal a second, getting some excess of metal, about 50k, not too bad. So we've produced this second experimental gantry. This is important, right? So we're getting to the stage where really we're not going to grow that much more, because we've actually run out of room, particularly for aphises. So unless we get creative, we're maxing out now on about 2,500 metal per second. Now, one thing we're not doing, if you're observant, and you would be right, is not building shields everywhere to protect us against all the long-range artillery. That isn't my focus this game. An idea might be to try and get a T2 constructed craft off of air and start deleting some of these construction turrets and putting your shields down here, or getting rid of invaluable things. Don't get rid of your aphises or your T2 energy converters. Get rid of the construction turrets. Should be plenty of room to put down enough shield generators then, and hopefully you're lucky with your shield placement. I want to see if we can get up to 100 Titans before the 1 hour mark. And pretty much at about the 2,500 mark or so, we're going to have to build something else somewhere to get rid of this metal, or just start donating it. It just gets too hard to spend almost. I'm sure if you're creative you can do it. It's just whether you spend it effectively. How many Titans do we end up getting? I think that's about it. I think the 64-minute mark, just to show you this ridiculous amount of Titans. So we've got about 140 at the 64-minute mark. We've got 2,500 metal per second that we've been able to fit into the area. I hope you enjoyed this video on a better eco-based build in which you can contribute, I must admit, minimally before the 25-minute stage, but still you can contribute so much more from the 25 to 65-minute stage than you would believe is perhaps possible if you can really hone in on your scaling. Of course, with this base I've built, it's taking over the other one, the canyon. Let's pretend it died off, because we weren't defending it. We were defending it minimally. But seriously, sometimes the footprint that other base has is very small, and we can creep right up to it. So pretty much the only thing that was reaching over it was where I was building that second experimental gantry. We could build that anywhere on the map, guys. So I'm a believer you can get up to at least 2,000 metal a second within your area within sort of the 60-minute stage, which is just going to lead to the economy of doom as far as I can see in the Glitters map. And there's always this feeling when you play multiplayer that, oh, I've got to get out the units now, I've got to attack now, I've got to do something now. But when the battle has sort of bogged down a little bit, you can afford to sit back and spend your time scaling up to the maximum amount. And as long as you do it quicker than the other guys, look, the game's won. So you need to keep that in mind too. Quite often, I'm guilty of it. I rush the enemy too quickly with Thors or whatever, with 8 of them. I don't support them properly, and then they resurrect all the Thors, and it was just a waste of time. If I'd hit them with 30 Thors, they wouldn't be able to put up with that. Like, no front line's going to be able to deal with that, basically. It's going to crumple it. So waiting a little bit longer in the late game might pay huge dividends. That said, I think we've covered enough with this eco-based build. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree, or if you've got some thoughts, and a like or subscribe if you want to watch more of my content. All right, thanks very much. See you next video.